Okay, this question is asking about what is happening inside the material during in polymer material during a tensile test, and it tells you that the polymer is a semicrystalline sample of polyethylene terephthalate. And the question asks you to discuss the response of both the amorphous and crystalline phases. So the idea here is that the polymer consists of regions of what we would call polymeric crystalline, and once again, that is really essentially the molecule folding back upon itself, and this represents polymeric crystallinity, whereas there are other regions where the molecule is not in any kind of short-range order. So these regions right here would be crystalline, this would be non-crystalline, and it asks you what's going on during a tensile test in both of these regions. So for this, it's really important to remember how a tensile test works. Just as a reminder, in a tensile testing machine, what we have is the sample is gripped inside of these fixtures, and it is extended very slowly through the movement of this crosshead. And what's measured is actually the load which the sample exerts in uniaxial tension, in this case, on the load cell. And the load cell records the force that the sample exerts as it's extended. So when we go back and we look at the results here in this stress-strain graph, we know that there is this initial elastic region right here where the stress that is developed is proportional to the strain. And then at this yielding point here, what we see is that, or you can imagine that in a tensile test, the strain would continue, but what happens is the stress that's required to continue the strain is actually decreasing. And then eventually, as you continue to strain it, that stress increases until the sample breaks at some sort of ultimate yield stress. So the critical question is, what's happening inside the material during this after the yielding? And it's important to remember that during this period, the delta V equals 0. So there is no volume change. So as you see essentially the material changing shape, what's happening at the molecular level is that the molecules are somehow reorganizing in order to accommodate the changes in shape without changes in volume. So presumably we're above the glass transition temperature, and so what happens after yielding is that the molecules are rotating about the bonds along the length of the chain in order to accommodate the changes in shape. The text of the problem says that the sample is actually semicrystalline PET. So not only are the molecules rotating along the intramolecular bonds, the covalent bonds inside the length of the chain, but they are also essentially unzipping. So if we imagine that some of the regions inside the molecule are crystalline like this, we know that the rotation of the bonds inside this crystalline region is causing the molecule to essentially become extended. And so the additional elongation is being accommodated by essentially the unzipping of these crystalline regions. Ultimately, you'll get to a point where you can no longer unzip the molecule, and you actually have to pull on the bonds within the chain itself.